Long weekend. The Fairholme Inn wasn't the oldest motel in town, but it wasn't far from it. It was a relic of the 50s and built accordingly. The walls were concrete block walls, the doors were steel, and the only window was bulletproof and unbreakable. So much for fire department access. The hurricane roof was a simple concrete slab. On the plus side, it was cheap. Room 120 was at the far end of the first floor, near the wooded area behind the building. It was the room my wife Sarah and her co-worker occupied every Friday night when she had to leave work with the girls. Bob Davis was not one of those girls. The kids had separated, and Sarah and I were experiencing empty nest syndrome. I was focused on raising money for our retirement, and she decided it was more important to enjoy real life, which I wasn't a part of. I didn't particularly enjoy my job in the machine shop, but I felt I had to tolerate it. In addition to her becoming very abrasive and prone to arguments, our sex life suffered greatly. I decided it was time to take remedial action. She did not know that I was aware of her affair with Robert. I never felt the need to argue with her about it. I don't know if she noticed that my interest in sex had been steadily declining over the past month. I hadn't lost my sex drive, I just didn't want to have sex with her. On Monday, I quit my job. The second step was a quick trip to Harbor Freight. For less than $150, I was able to purchase a 110-volt arc welding machine and a good set of safety glasses and gloves. I spent that evening in the garage learning how to set up and use the little welder. I wasn't very good at it, but I was able to do what I needed to do. Sarah never bothered me while I was working on projects. On Tuesday, I spent most of the day taking care of all the things I need to take care of perfectly: banking, utilities, insurance, and other nonsense. Credit cards can wait until Friday. I changed the oil in my 10-year-old Outback and put on a new set of tires. On Wednesday, while Sarah was at work, I was able to carefully pick out all the things I wanted to take with me from home. In fact, there weren't many. Since I was going south, I focused on comfortable clothes. It took much less time to pack than I expected. There was so much stuff left over that she wouldn't even notice anything was missing. After lunch, I went downtown and managed to get a cell phone jammer. That little thing cost me a lot more than a welding machine since they are illegal. I booked a room at the Fairholme Inn for Thursday and asked for room 120. I considered using an assumed name, but in the end decided it didn't matter. I checked availability for Friday and was told the room was already booked. Good old predictable Bob. Thursday was a day of preparation. All week, my relationship with Sarah had been normal. She had no idea anything was going on. She didn't know I quit my job. She didn't know that I had withdrawn from all of our bank accounts except for the $100 I had left in the account. She didn't know that I was aware of her relationship with Bob. She didn't know that I had taken out a second mortgage on the house. She didn't know that all utility bills were mailed to my brother's house. She didn't know that her car insurance had been canceled. I had lunch at Red Lobster and checked into my room at the Fairholme Inn shortly after 4. There wasn't much to do, so I took my time. I took the batteries out of the fire alarm and CO2 detectors. I removed the phone jack cover, disconnected the wires, and dropped them into a recess in the wall. I made sure the cleaning lady was gone for the day and set to work on the door. First, I drilled a small hole in the lower left corner of the door and inserted a self-tapping bolt. I needed a pad for the welder. I took a heavy-duty aluminum oxide sanding belt and carefully cleaned 3 8-centimeter sections of the door and door frame on each side and top. I considered turning off the water supply to the toilet and sink and removing the handles, but changed my mind. It was over much quicker than I expected. As I left, I checked the hallways for CCTV cameras and noticed there were none. Interesting. I got home just in time for dinner. I thought about having sex with my wife one last time, but quickly changed my mind. She was still attractive in her 42, but I just couldn't convince myself of that. Leaving in the morning, Sarah reminded me that it was bachelorette night and that I needed to make dinner. I smiled and nodded. Friday was a boring day. I had so overplanned and overprepared that I had nothing to do but wait. I did some final checks and then checked into the hotel to wait for the lovers to arrive. I parked in an inconspicuous spot, and 10 minutes later they showed up. They didn't go in from the front door, but parked and came in through the back door. I decided I might as well do the same. 30 minutes later, I made up my mind. 3 meters from the door was a fire stand. It was a plain box with a glass front, a hose, and an emergency axe. My cell phone jammer was attached to the base with a grounding magnet. It blocked all cell phone signals within a 20-meter radius. The 9-volt battery would last at least 72 hours. It couldn't be seen without bending over. The rooms were almost soundproof, but I was still worried. It only took about 5 minutes to set up. I attached the base and began welding the door, sanding it down beforehand. The hot paint smelled a little, but not too bad. I was almost done when the door to room 119 opened. I stopped and looked up to see an extremely large, hairy man wearing a hat. We looked at each other for a few seconds, and he started to smile. He realized what I was doing. A cheating wife? I just nodded. As he was leaving for the lobby, he looked back and said, "Cool." 2 minutes later, I was done and out the door. No one ever showed up. By 6 o'clock, I was on the road, wondering if I had wasted my time and made an even bigger fool of myself. I had hoped that Sarah and her lover would stay locked in the room for the weekend, but nothing came of it. Anyway, they managed to get out by Saturday evening. The fire department was called in to break the door open, and that caused some fuss, too. I found out about all of this from my brother after I got settled into my new place. Sometimes it's good to have a common name like John Smith. Despite this, I decided to take my middle name for a while. No one is looking for David Smith in Moss Bluff, Florida. I have no credit cards or current accounts. I have enough money to last me almost 20 years. I pay for everything in cash, including rent on my one and only motorhome. Yes, it has air conditioning. The end.